Hello friends, my name is Emile and welcome back to Reach the Peak, the show where you guys recommend the cars and then I take them up our hill climb course to see which one can come out on top. As always, we have 5 vehicles here today and we're going to be kicking off today with a very interesting supercar, the most expensive car in the world at one point. This is the 1998 Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR. 622 horsepower, 539 foot-pound of torque, 3,175 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful vehicle here today. It's also the torquiest. It's also the highest in PI. It is an S2 class car, 912 in PI, when it is equipped with the snow tyres. So, of course, this is a supercar, which is good. However, it's rear-wheel drive, and as we've seen in the past, rear-wheel drive cars obviously don't do as well as four-wheel drive cars or even front-wheel drive cars up here. That being said, the CLK GTR does stand a decent chance of becoming the fastest rear-wheel drive car, which is currently the upgrade hero Ferrari 458 Italia. The CLK GTR then, what does it actually like to drive? It is extremely nice, actually. This car is a very good handling vehicle, no matter the circumstances usually, and surprisingly enough, on snow, yeah, it is a really good handling car. Again, tarmac is definitely the home of this thing. I wouldn't, build this up as a rally car, as an alternative to, say, an MG Metro. But, as far as just if you absolutely have to drive this thing on snow, then yeah, it works well for that. And it is very, very good at coping with the snow. The Achilles heel of the CLK GTR really does come in kind of its suspension form. Basically, it's a very low-down car, it's a very hard car because it's essentially a road-going race car, and as a result, this thing really does struggle when it comes to bumps. It's just very, very bad. You can drive it across the field just fine. As soon as there's some bumps, though, this car can start having issues. That means through this ice section here, I did really have to take it easy. You can see the front end of the vehicle just lifting up there, which is a shame. I would have liked to take that section at more speed. I could probably saved a couple of seconds off the time if I was able to go flat out through some of these bends that have bumps, but just as far as it stands, the CLK doesn't like the bumps. Other than that, though, it is really a very, very good car indeed, and I would recommend driving it if you haven't already. Next up, we have our only real proper rally car of today. We have the 1984 Opel Manta 400, 275 horsepower, 221 foot-pound of torque, 2,183 pounds of weight. This is the lightest vehicle here today, and it is an A-class car, 791 in PI, when equipped with snow tyres, which it is equipped with stock, I do believe. So the Opel Manta then, one of the more forgotten of the 80s rally cars. One of the reasons for that, well, it's rear-wheel drive, which, during the 80s we found out that was not a particularly good idea. Cars like the Audi Quattro, Peugeot 205 T16, Lancia Delta S4, the last hugely successful Group B rally car was the Lancia 037, and so when the Manta started coming in, it just was a bit outclassed. That being said, though, I do like the Opel Manta. It is a pretty cool looking vehicle. However, on its driving characteristics, it really is nowhere near as good as you'd expect. The rally cars around here usually do extremely, extremely well. They handle really well, they deal with the bumps, they deal with the surface. The Manta, mainly due to the fact it's rear-wheel drive, doesn't particularly do that as well. It does like to slide, which I wasn't really expecting, nor did I particularly want from this vehicle. It really did have a tendency to get sideways. It also felt like it was getting bogged down a bit. Now, admittedly, I don't think the Manta ever really went rallying in the snow. You can quote me if I'm wrong on that. Please tell me if I am wrong. I don't really know too much about the Manta, if I'm honest. But, yeah, it just really struggled with the snow, which is a bit of a shame. I would have liked to see this car do a lot better than it did. But, it is a rear-wheel drive car at the end of the day, and it is, while it does have some rally equipment on it, rally suspension and so on, it is, at the end of the day, just a sports car. So, yeah, a little bit disappointing from the Manta, but, I still like the car, admittedly. Although, if I was to pick a car to drive up here, I certainly wouldn't pick the Manta. If I had to pick a car for sort of snow purposes, the Manta I would probably avoid after today's findings. Next up, we have the 1992 Nissan Skyline R32. We return to all-wheel drive with this car, and it has 320 horsepower, 261 foot-pound of torque, and it weighs 3,307 pounds. It's an A-class car, 765 in PI, when equipped with the snow tyres. So, of course, we've had quite a few of the Skylines around. In fact, we've had sort of the 3 major generations up now after this vehicle's gone up. So that's the R34, R33, and R32. When it comes to the R32, what's it like to drive? It is lovely. I don't know if it's just because I got out the Manta, and, you know, coming back to an all-wheel drive car with not a huge amount of power and, you know, known for being a pretty decent handling vehicle. You know, maybe that did shock me a little bit, but yeah, the R32 drives really very nicely indeed. It's a lovely controlled car. You know, you won't get yourself into too much trouble when it comes to the R32, or indeed pretty much every single Skyline, you know. You will have to struggle to try and make these Skylines snap on you or anything. Some of the Skyline's issues, you know, they are fairly minimal. One of which is sort of the major one for me, is this car just seems to lack power at the top end. You know, sort of once the turbo has sort of come, did everything it can and gone away, there really isn't much more power at the top end, and it did feel a little bit slow, admittedly. But that being said, you know, it is a very, very solid car. Gearbox on this vehicle wasn't particularly good either. I don't think I really ever got out of third gear with this. The R33 had the same issue as well. I'm not sure, maybe they do share gearboxes. But yeah, I mean, they're both pretty terrible. If you're going to drive a Skyline, I would definitely say to swap out that gearbox if you're going to be doing any form of short tracks or, you know, tracks with lots of corners. You will want a better gearbox, but other than that, it is hard to recommend against using one of these Skylines because they are phenomenal vehicles. They're really good handling, they're good to look at, they're good to drive, they're just really good vehicles overall. So you've probably already used one before. If you haven't, I guess give the Skyline a go. Next up, another four-wheel drive vehicle. We have the 2017 Jaguar F-Pace S, 380 horsepower, 332 foot-pound torque, 4,015 pounds. This is the heaviest vehicle here today. It is an A-class car, 779 in PI when equipped with the snow tyres. So the F-Pace then, unfortunately we haven't got the sort of highest spec of this vehicle. We haven't got a version of this car with, say, the F-Type's supercharged R engine. But we have got this S, and the S does deliver decent power for what it is. The vehicle itself, what's it like to drive? It's okay. It's relatively decent. I will say I drove this thing on sort of the base game. I drove it on land and I drove it on dirt, and I was initially impressed with how this vehicle does. On the snow, it does seem to struggle a little bit more than it did on land. It does have a tendency to oversteer, actually, believe it or not. You know, you can get this vehicle to oversteer relatively easily, which is a bit of a mark against it, and it wasn't something I was particularly expecting. Some saving graces with the F-Pace though, it does have a super snappy gearbox, a really lovely gearbox. I don't know if it's just because I got out of the R32, but yeah, gearbox in this vehicle is super snappy, super quick. It's got loads of ratios. It's, you know, no complaints when it comes to the actual gearbox itself. You know, personally for me, I do actually really like the look of the F-Pace as well. This is probably the best looking SUV, in my opinion, that currently exists. I really like it a lot. You know, Jaguar at the moment, styling wise, can't really do anything wrong. And the F-Pace just sort of goes to prove that, yeah, you can really, you know, make an SUV that actually looks quite good. Another thing worth to mention is the F-Pace obviously does well with the bumps and jumps just because it has got a higher ride height. You know, again, the F-Pace is one of those cars which maybe it's not supposed to really go off-road. You know, it's certainly not a Range Rover or anything, but it copes fine. I mean, if you have to drive this thing up a snowy peak, you'll be fine, but ultimately I'd probably stick this thing to land or even some sort of dirt trails. Our final car today goes to front-wheel drive, and we have the 2016 Abarth 695 Biposto, 186 horsepower, 183 foot-pound of torque, 2,198 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful vehicle here today, it's the least torquey vehicle here today, and it's the lowest in PI. It's B698 when equipped with the snow tyres. So the 695 Biposto then. For those of you who've been following the channel for a while, you'll know I absolutely love Fiats. Hell, I own one. And the 695 Biposto has become one of my favourites. I reviewed this thing back when it came in Forza Motorsport 6, and I thought it was an absolutely phenomenal little car to drive. Horizon 3, sorry, leads me to believe the same conclusion on land. However, I kind of knew this vehicle would struggle when it came to the snow, and ultimately, yeah, it did struggle a little bit. It really does struggle in the turns. It has a very similar issue to the Cooper JCW that we saw last time. You know, it does suffer from huge amounts of understeer, on power understeer through the corners, and it's just a theme we've been seeing with the front wheel drive cars. Granted, you know, their off-road performance is better than rear-wheel drive cars, you know, because they're not spinning the rear wheels uselessly, they're sort of spinning the front wheels, which is clawing up the mountain. But again, I've just found understeer issues with the front-wheel drive cars. That being said, though, they have proven that they are very quick indeed in the past. And the Abarth, you know, it can shift, certainly. It's not a completely underpowered car. 186 horsepower going through such a small car. You know, it has got a fairly decent power-to-weight ratio. The one thing I will say for the Biposto is stick this thing to land. Don't take it off-road. It's just not really suited for it. And indeed, you know, say the JCW Cooper and the Astra VXR, you know, all those front-wheel drive cars that did suffer from understeer, you know, keep those things on land. That's where they enjoy being. Admittedly, the 695 Biposto out of the three I mentioned is the one I'd go for, because it is the best handling, or one of the best handling hot hatches of recent memory. It is a phenomenal car to drive. I recommend driving this thing on land, see what you think of it. You could probably turn it into a rally car with some upgrades, but it's not really worth it. It's worth keeping it stock as the little barnstormer it is. Anyways, onto the times, and the fastest vehicle of today is the CLK GTR. Going into 17th with a 207.494, it becomes the fastest rear-wheel drive car we've ever had. It's not too far off the Gymkhana Focus, which is a really, really good place to be from that CLK GTR. It really did handle absolutely fantastically. Moving down the board, we find the F-Pace goes into 30th with a 215.335, just missing out on the Alfa Romeo 4C. The R32 is just behind that, though, with a 215.702, fractionally beats the R33. Those cars, choosing between them, there's virtually no point. They're very, very similar. The R32 also beats a Lotus 340R and a standard Impreza 22B, which is a pretty decent, that's pretty decent going from the R32 Skyline. Finally, now at the bottom of the board for today, we have the 695 Biposto going to 51st with a 221.775. Almost as quick as the Vulcan. It just misses out on the Mini by 0.4 of a second. And the Opel Manta is the slowest car today, unfortunately, going into 52nd with a 222.442. Does beat the Donkavort D8. It also beats the Lancia 037 Stradale, which I guess is kind of surprising, although the 037 is significantly down on power. Ultimately, the Manta, though, just wasn't quite as good as maybe I was expecting it to be. Anyways, friends, that is it for this episode of Reach the Peak. As always, if you have cars you'd like to request for this series, simply type them down below in the comment section and I will add them to my list. With that all being said and done, friends, I do hope you've enjoyed. Thank you all very much for watching. My name's been the Real Emile, and until next time, a farewell.